In a previous video, I talked about some portfolio ideas that you could implement if you're trying to get a job as a data analyst in the healthcare industry. Today, I'm going to show you step by step how you can build your own dashboard that you can put in your own portfolio. And it's going to look like this. This is an emergency room dashboard using real-world fake data. You can see that there's the number of patients visiting the emergency room. We have volumes stratified by age, average wait time, patient satisfaction, all kinds of things here. So I'm going to show you how to build all of that in this tutorial. All right, so to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to first connect to our data source. So to do that, I'm going to go to the text file, and I'm going to select Hospital ER. That's the name of this data that I downloaded from data.world, and that's the real-world fake data dataset, and that's going to simulate what that data is going to look like in the emergency room. Now, I'm not going to go over every single column here. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but there are a couple things I'm going to point out here. So the patient ID is not going to look like this in real life. This appears to be like a fake social security number. In reality, I'm not going to use a patient's social security number to uniquely identify them. I'm going to use a randomly generated primary key for that. So just keep that in mind. One thing I'll also point out is this patient satisfaction score. In this data set, it's graded on a scale from 0 to 10. We also have this patient admin flag. I honestly don't know what that is. I was thinking maybe it's admission to the hospital, but I tried to confirm that on the data dictionary on data.world, but it provided no definition for a patient admin flag. So as a result, I'm going to right click and I'm just going to hide that because I don't know what it does. We have patient wait time. What patient wait time is looking at is the number of minutes that the patient was waiting to get treated in the emergency department. And then finally, we have department referral. Department referral is what specialty got involved in the treatment of that patient in the emergency room. So for example, if a senior citizen slipped and broke their hip, you might get orthopedics involved. If you have a situation where you're bringing in a baby and they have a high fever, maybe that's just general practice. All right, so now that I've explained how this data works, let's actually dig in and start building some visualizations. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a data visualization that counts up how many patients visited the emergency department over the span of time that our data set includes. So to do that, I'm going to click on Sheet 1, and we're going to build that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take patient ID, I'm going to drag that to text, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to count the number of times there was a patient in this data set, which represents an emergency room encounter. Now, in reality, you're going to see patients show up into the emergency room once a year, or sometimes twice a year, or sometimes 3 times a year, or sometimes as much as 20 times a year. This data set doesn't take that into account. It only represents each patient one time, but just keep in mind that that's a thing that you will see in reality when you're working in a hospital. For now, we're just going to count the number of times that the patient ID is found in this data set. That's going to represent how many encounters in the emergency room we have over this span of time. Okay, so I'm going to click on text again, and I'm going to bump this down to the second line, and I'm going to say number of patients in ER. Or better yet, we could say number of patients visiting ER. So there we go. Then I'm going to click on text, and I'm going to center this. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to left click, click here. I'm going to blow this up to around a font of 16. I'm going to make it bold and then Tableau medium. That should be good for now. Our first visualization is done. We only got several more to go. So I'm just going to call this number PATS ED. So our first visualization is done. On to the next one. Next, we're going to click on New Worksheet. And now we're going to do gender. So I'm just going to type gender here for the title. I'm going to drag patient gender to rows. You can see female, male, and non-conforming. And we're going to do the same thing again, where we're going to take the patient identification number. We're going to right click, and I'm going to go down to count. That's going to convert that into a green pill. which means it's a continuous variable. I'm going to drag that over to text, and that's going to count off how many patients in each gender did we see in the emergency room over the span of time that we're looking at. But the number isn't necessarily that informative to me in and of itself. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to convert this into a table calculation. So we go down here, and I'm going to select % of total, and that will give us the percentage that should add up to 100%. That gives us each percentage of each gender that we have in our data set. We're going to come back to this later to format it a little bit more so that it looks nice and pretty when we start putting this onto the dashboard. But for now, let's move on to the next data visualization. To get started on the next visual, we'll click New Worksheet again. And now we're going to do Patient Satisfaction. So for patient satisfaction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the date to columns. I'm going to right click, and then this is going to be a month. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take patient satisfaction score. I'm going to drag that to rows. And instead of the sum, we want the average. We're looking at data on a scale from 0 to 10. We don't want to add up each instance of that. We want to average it out or take the median. I'm going to use the average here. I'm also going to edit this axis so that it doesn't include the 0 axis, because I really want to emphasize any differences that we see in these fluctuations or this volatility. So I will get rid of that include 0 axis by editing the axis by right clicking, and then this one here. I'm actually going to get rid of this axis because I'm going to have the tooltip show all that information if the user were to hover over those points. I'm going to right click here and remove this header because that also will be visible in the tooltip that we see when we hover over these points. Now I'm going to create this same exact graph, but I'm going to do that with the wait time instead. So to do that, right click here, duplicate, and then instead of using this, we're going to swap this out. We're going to use patient wait time. And we're going to right click again, and we're going to use the average again for the same reasons. We have minutes. We don't want to add up all the minutes that a patient is waiting in April 2019 or May 2019. We want to average it. And I'm going to set this up in the same way where I don't include the 0. I'm going to right click here and not show the header. And I'm also going to edit the title so that it says wait time average. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 more visualizations that are going to be paired with each of these line graphs. One is going to show just the single number of patient satisfaction over this whole period of time that we're looking at. So it's going to be some number between 0 and 10. It's going to be what the average satisfaction level was overall over this whole time span. I'm also going to do that same thing with the wait time average. I'm just going to take the average wait time over that whole period of time, and I'm going to display that number close to that line graph as well. So we're going to add 2 more worksheets. I'll just get those built right now. So sheet 5 and sheet 6. For sheet 5, I'm just going to call this average satisfaction. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the satisfaction score, so this patient sat score. I'm going to go to text, drag it there, right click here, make this an average. So we have an overall average of 4.992. I think that number is a little bit too long though, so I'm going to shorten this to 2 decimal points. So right click, format, we're going to go to numbers, and then I'll go to custom, and then it'll just be 2 decimal places. Now I'm going to format the text a little bit. So I go up here and I left click here. I'm going to say average patient satisfaction. And this is going to be out of 10. I'm going to emphasize this part of the text. I'm going to blow that up to like 14. So I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to remove this because we already have average patient satisfaction, so we don't need that title in there. Next, we're going to do the same thing, but for patient wait time. So click here, and we're going to call this average wait time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the patient wait time, I'm going to drag that over to text. I'm going to right click, and then that's going to be the average. I go back to text, and then I bump this down to the second line, and I say average wait time. Average wait time. This is going to be minutes, and then I'm going to bump this up to whatever that font size was on the previous one. I think that was 14. Let me check here. That was 14. So we have the right font size. I'm going to hide this again. So that's looking good. We've just got 4 more visualizations we've got to build. Then we can start plopping things into our dashboard that we're going to create. Next, we're going to build an area graph that's going to look at the number of patients over time. And it's also going to be stratified by these different age groupings, which we're going to need to create a calculation for. So it's going to be very similar to how we set up these graphs, but that calculation is just going to be a little involved, so I'll show you how that works. Click on New Worksheet. We're going to go up to Analysis, Create Calculated Field. I'm going to call this Age Groupings. Suppose that I wanted to group our patients in 0 to 18, 19 to 65, and then 66 and up. Here's how I would do that. Here we're going to say if patient age is greater than or equal to 0 and patient age is less than or equal to 18, then, and that's going to be a string, a text field that's going to be 0 through 18. Else if, and then we're going to take this, I'm going to copy it down. Actually, I need to copy this whole thing here, including the then part here. Then this is going to be something. This is going to be going from 19 to 65. So it has to be greater than or equal to 19 and less than or equal to 65. That's going to be 19 through 65. And then I'm going to copy this down to the next line. And that's going to be 66. It has to be greater than or equal to 66. I'm actually going to trim out this part here because I only want to look at patients 66 and up for this range. And then I'm going to say end. And that also needs to have then. That will complete the calculation. It says the calculation is valid and we can proceed. So when we're setting up this line graph, it's going to be very similar to patient satisfaction and wait time average in that we're just going to take date, drag that to columns, right click and make that month. Then I'm going to take patient ID. I'm going to drag it here for a moment. I'm going to right click and I'm going to convert that into a count. Then I'll take that up to rows and you can see that it's starting to look familiar. We're just going to want to stratify this according to those age groupings. To do that, I'm going to drag this over to detail. Notice how it changes now. We have these 3 line graphs. This top one's going to represent 19 to 65. This one's going to represent 0 through 18. This one is going to represent age 66 and up. But now you might be thinking, well, how do we create an area out of this? Well, you simply do this. You go to this bar here, this drop down, you click area, but it's not really showing any color. It's just blue. It's just one single color. So to differentiate these age groups, we're going to want to color them in. So to do that, I'm going to hold down the control key and I'm going to drag age groupings. That's going to create a duplicate of this column. I release it and now we have our different colorations for these different age groups. I want to make these different shades of blue or purple, so I'm going to go up here and maybe I'll select a palette that's mostly blue and purple. Maybe this Tableau Classic here has some good colors. I'll pick this, and this maybe. And we can change this color later if it clashes too much with what the other visualizations and all the other graphs are going to look like on our dashboard, but this looks pretty good for now. One last touch is I'm going to take the age groupings, I'm going to hold down the control key again to create another duplicate, and I'm going to put that next to the label box, and that's going to label out each of these age ranges here. Another thing that I like to do is I like to abbreviate these dates. so that it just says month, month, month dash year, year. To do that, you right click, go to Format, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Axis and make sure that these dates are a custom type. You're going to type month, 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 or MMM to represent the month letters, dash YY to represent year, year, just 2 digits representing the year. You can see it's now in an abbreviated format here. We don't need this month of date because that part is obvious. So I'm going to edit the axis and I'm just going to remove this. We don't need count of patient ID here because I'm going to specify up here what this is. It's the number of patients by age visiting the emergency department. So double click here. I'm going to type out number of patients by age in ED. I'm going to right click here, edit axis, and I'm going to remove that title so that that disappears and gives us more space to work with. Lastly, I'm just going to title this number of patients by age. The next thing that I'm going to build is a sort of highlight table or heat map that's going to track what times of the day on what days of the week are we seeing the most activity in the emergency department. So it's going to have one axis that's going to track the hour, each hour within a 24-hour period lined up against days of the week. So you're going to have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then within each column there's going to be each hour of the day, and it's going to look at how many patients visited the emergency department within each cell. We're going to create a new worksheet. So I'm going to take the date and I'm going to move that to both columns and rows. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say more on this top section here, not this section, but this section. And I'm going to pick weekday. Now you might be asking, well, why did I pick weekday from here and not pick day from here? I'll show you what happens if I pick day here. This is going to be like this continuous motion of days. We just want these discrete weekdays and we want to line that up with the time of day down here. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to pick more and then I'm going to pick hour. And what this is doing is it's saying, look at all of the midnights on Sundays within our data set and look at some number. And that's going to be the average wait time that we're going to have in this grid. So it's going to say take every single Sunday at midnight and look at the average wait time at that particular point in time. And there's going to be multiples. And then do that for 1 a.m. every Sunday that we have in our data set. And do that for 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. And also do that for Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. So each cell is going to give us some pattern. We're going to see, is there a pattern to our data here? So to fill this in, I'm going to go to patient wait time. I'm going to drag that to text. This is summing up all of the minutes that the patient was in the emergency room. We don't want that. We just want the average. So we're going to right click and I'm going to go to average. Next, I'm going to hold down the control key to create a duplicate of this, and I'm going to drag it to color. Next, I'm going to go to this drop down. I'm going to select square, and that's going to fill in a sort of gradient density of wait times. I'm not too crazy about the color scheme though. I want to add some warmth to the cells that are above the average. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to color. I'm going to edit the colors. I'm going to select, maybe I'll select red, black, diverging. I'll apply that, see how that looks. It looks like right now it's giving warmth to the short patient wait times, but I want to reverse that. So let's do that. That's looking better. Next, what I want to do is I want to format these hours so that it's not showing the military time, rather it's showing like the actual time of day, like 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. or 3 a.m. To do that, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to format, I'm going to go to dates, and then 12 hour. I also want to abbreviate these weekdays, so I'm going to right click there, I'm going to format, I'm going to go to dates, I'm going to go to abbreviation, and there we go. We can hide date here because it's pretty self-explanatory what that is. We can hide hour of date because that's also self-explanatory, so I'll right click here, hide field labels for rows. Now this is looking pretty good, but we're going to format this a little bit more later on. For now, I'm just going to call this heat map. We're almost to the point where we can plug these into a dashboard. We just need to build 2 more visualizations. So I'm going to build 2 bar graphs, one that's going to represent the number of patients by race, and another bar graph that's going to look at the number of patients by the specialty that they had to see. So we're going to take the patient race and I'm going to drag that to rows. Next, I'm going to go to patient ID and I'm going to drag that to columns. I'm going to add all members, right click, go to measure, count, and that's going to give us these bars that are going to show us the number of patients belonging to a certain race that was in the emergency department. We're going to sort this in descending order. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the control key again to create a duplicate of this green pill, the count of the patient ID. I'm going to drag that over to color to create a sort of gradient density here. What I also like to do is I like to label the number of patients belonging to each race at the tip. I like to put that number at the tip. So to do that, I'm going to hold down the control key again to create a duplicate, and I'm going to put that on the label. And then I'm going to hide this. Because the patient race is pretty self-explanatory with these words here, I'm going to right click on patient race and I'm just going to say hide field label for rows. And I'm going to name this patient race. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this for this next part because I'm lazy and I want to just keep the formatting the same way it is. I'm just going to remove this and I'm going to put in department referral instead. And then I'm going to sort this in descending order. And I don't care about the none group. I just want to look at the groups where a patient was referred. So I'm just going to exclude this one. And I'm also going to give this one a name. I'm going to call this DEPT referral. So we've built all the visualizations we need. The next part is to plug this into a dashboard and then do final formatting, and then we'll be done. I actually need to recharge my battery on my camera, so I will see you guys in a couple of seconds. All right, I am back with a fully recharged camera battery. So the next step is to click on this middle button down here. That's going to create a new dashboard. I'm going to go to size. I'm going to select fixed size and then generic desktop. I'm going to plug in a color that I already picked out ahead of time. To do that, I'm going to go to dashboard, format. I'm going to go to this default color and then I'm going to pick this color. Now, if you want to follow along with the exact same color that I'm using, I'm going to drop the color code down in the description below. If you want to plug that in, you would just go to more colors and then you would plug in that code right here. Okay, and that will give you the exact color that I'm about to use. But I'm going to use this color. Now what we do is I'm going to start putting in some containers into my dashboard. Those containers are going to store different data visualizations or different images for the dashboard. Containers are a little tricky to get the hang of in Tableau. It takes a few attempts to really get something looking good and clean in your dashboard. So don't be discouraged if you don't get the hang of it at first. It takes a lot of practice to master. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this horizontal container, I'm going to drag it into this area where it says drop sheets here, and then I'm going to fill that in with a color. So I'm going to go to layout to do that, background, and then I'm going to select this color, which I already picked out ahead of time. And then I'm going to kind of push that a little bit to the side. So to do that, I'm going to go back to dashboard. I'm going to pick another horizontal container. I'm going to drag that over here until I see something that looks like this, like a little white region here. And then I'm going to move that over so that we have this sort of side panel here. So now that we have that side banner, what I want to do next is plop a bunch of tiles onto the center region here. So to do that, I'm going to go to horizontal container. I'm going to move it just to the point where it gets like this. You can see that region there that's getting highlighted. I'm going to put that there. That's going to form our title. And in fact, I'm going to plug in some text right now by taking this text object and dropping it in right there. We can call this Data Wizardry Emergency Room Dashboard. And I'll say Emergency Room Visits Dashboard. Let's blow that up to a font size of maybe 24, bold, Tableau medium, and a somewhat darker font like maybe this one right here. That's looking pretty good. Let's move that up a tiny bit, and there we go. Next, we're going to move another horizontal container just beneath that in this region right here. That's going to form our second banner, which is going to contain different data visualizations. I'm going to move that up a little bit. I'm going to add another one like this, and that should be enough. Now I'm just going to put some tiles within these banners to organize things. So I'm going to pick horizontal containers again, and I'm going to go here, and that's going to create these two sections here. And then I'm going to add another section right in the middle. For this banner, I'm going to add a horizontal container so that we just have two columns here in this row. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing for the banner beneath that. So now that we've done that, let's fill in our tiles with some color. So for this tile, I'm going to make this one completely black. So I'm going to go to Layout after I've selected this one. I'm going to go to Background, and I'm just going to make that black. We're going to color in the remaining tiles with the same color. To do that, select any of these empty tiles, go here, make sure you're on the Layout tab, go to Background, and then select whatever color you want to put in to that tile. I already have one that I selected in advance, and that'll also be in the description below. I have all those HTML codes, so just plug them in here if you want to use the exact color. So I'm going to do that for each of these. So this one, we're going to do this one, this one, this one, and this one. Now this looks pretty ugly right now. I'm going to separate each tile from each other so that there's some space and so that they look like they're sort of floating away from each other. So for example, if I click on this one and then I go to outer padding, that's going to push the edges inward a little bit so that it looks like it's separated from the others. So once I do that, you can see that there's some of that background space around that tile now. So I'm going to do that for all of these. I'm going to give it 10 for each of them. And notice that when I plug that in, all these other sides are getting the same number because this checkbox is marked. So I'm going to do that for this one. I'm going to do that for this one. These two tiles up here are going to store 3 different objects, and it's going to get tricky to format these in the same way as these tiles and this tile. So I'm going to do something a little bit special for these two. I'm going to go to Dashboard. I'm going to drag a container within this box here until I get this grayish region here. And then I'm going to divide this box up even further by taking another container and kind of hovering over this region to get this section here. So there's going to be something here, and something here. I'm going to do that same thing for this tile. So I'm going to go over here to Horizontal Objects. I'm going to drag that over till we get this shaded region. And then I'm going to divide this box up by going to Horizontal and then having that subdivided. Now I'm going to plug in color to these empty tiles. So to do that, click here, go to Layout, go to Background, and I'm going to plug in that same color I was using. Just going to do that for all of these remaining empty tiles like this. So I go here, go there, go here, and there we go. Now let's start plugging in our data visualizations. First, I'm going to put the gender and number of patient visits overall into this black box. I'm going to go to Dashboard. I'm going to go to number of PATs in the ED and plop it in right there. You'll notice this white background here. I'm going to right click and format that to change it. I want this to have a background of a black color, so I'm going to click on that paint bucket, go to Worksheet, click black, go over here to the font, and then I'm going to make this white bold, and there we go. That looks better. Now let's hide this title here. Next, I'm going to take the gender and I'm going to squeeze that in to the right of the number of patients visiting the emergency room. It's going to be a little tricky, so let's see if we can do this in one go. I'm going to left click here and drag this over to this edge right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click in this white space here, format, going to go to the paint bucket, make this black, go up here to this font icon. We're going to change that font again so that it's white, so it gives us a good contrast. We can remove this title, and then we can remove this title by right-clicking and hide field labels for rows. Now there's this ugly banding that's happening right here, so I'm going to right-click here, go to Format, then I'm going to go to this paint bucket again, and what we want to do is we want to remove the row banding from the header here. And then we can see that that has disappeared. There's also a row banding here, so we'll get rid of that on the pane level. And then we're going to left-click here, Fit to Entire View. Go here, click on this arrow, go to Fit, and then Entire View. Then we're going to drag this over a little bit so that that shows up now and it doesn't show these pound symbols. I'm going to drag that over a little bit so that we can see that as well. That's looking pretty decent so far. There's still a few things we need to do on the gender table. So right click here, Format. We're going to blow up that font a little bit more, maybe to a font size of 14. And then I'm going to drag this over a little bit so that these percentages start to appear. Now I'm not too crazy about these white lines that border the top and bottom of this visual. So to get rid of that, we'll hover over this, right click, Format, go to this grid, and under the Rows tab, I'm going to go to Row Divider, and I'm going to say None for the pane here. And that should take care of that. So next we're going to plop in the area graph that showed us the number of patient visits by age. To do that, we're going to go to the number of patients by age, drag that into this box here. You'll notice that there is this white background here. We're going to change that so that it blends in with the tile background. So again, you're going to hover over any negative space here, and then right click and Format, and then go to this paint bucket. Make sure it's on Sheet. Go to Worksheet, and then we're going to select that same color that we've been using for the tiles, and then that should blend in a little bit better. There's still these white lines on the graph that I want to get rid of, so we're going to stay within this formatting section, and I'm going to go to Lines, and then you're going to click on this Rows tab, and then you're going to get rid of grid lines. We still have a vertical white bar here. To get rid of that, within the same section, you just turn off axis rulers here. Next, we're going to plug in our heat map down here. So to do that, I'm going to go to heat map and just plug that in right there. We're going to go to this More Options button, go to Fit, and then Fit Width. You're going to hover over this white space again, right click, go to Format, and then go to this paint bucket, go to Sheet, go here, and then go to More Colors, and then fill in that color that we have been using for each of these tiles. Next, we're going to show the bar graphs on these sides, one that's going to have the number of visits by race, and then another one that looks at number of visits by department referral down here. So make sure that you're on the Dashboard tab right here. We're going to select Patient Race, drag that here, select Department Referral, drag that here. So now you've probably done this enough times now that you know exactly what to do to fill in these background colors with the tile. You're going to right click, Format, Worksheet, go down to More Colors, and then select that color that we've been using for these tiles. Do that again, right click, Format, you're going to use that paint bucket and go down here to More Colors and then fill that in. I want these bar graphs to each take up more space within their container, so I'm going to left click, I'm going to go down to More Options, Fit Entire View. I'm going to do that for this bottom graph as well. I'm going to line up this axis so that it's a little bit aligned with the one above it. We still see these white lines that are going perpendicular to these bars, so to get rid of those, left click here, right click, and then go to Format. We'll go to the Lines, make sure we're on the Columns tab, and then we'll get rid of grid lines. Do the same thing for the graph right below that, so right click, Format, go to Lines, and then None for the grid lines. One thing that I think could look better on the heat map here is making sure that there's some white lines dividing each cell. So if you want to do that, you can right click, Format, we'll go to this section here, Borders, and then I'm going to say White, and then I'll make this a little bit thicker. We'll do the same thing for rows. So we'll go here to Rows, I'll select white and we'll make that a little bit thicker, and that's looking pretty good. I like how there's a white space kind of dividing each cell up. You've probably noticed at this point that there's some junk accumulating up here. We don't need any of this stuff. I'm just gonna X out of these. But now once I do that, you'll notice that the banner disappears. This is the annoying thing about containers. They're pretty finicky to work with. So I'm just gonna plop that back in like that. I'm gonna go to layout and then fill that in with the same color that we had before. I'm gonna drag this over a little bit so that we can restore that banner to its original size. We're pretty close to being done. There's just a couple more things we need to do. I need to add in some visualizations to these three sections here and here. That part is going to be the most tricky, so I'm going to leave that for last. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to have my own personal icon up here, as well as some social media buttons, so that if someone saw my dashboard and there's a LinkedIn button and they were taken to my LinkedIn page, they could reach out to me and say, "Hey Josh, I love your emergency room dashboard. I want to hire you for some data visualization work." It's a long shot, but you never know. Let's add some image objects in the banner to accommodate these social media tags. So I'm going to drag one here. I'll just leave that blank for now. I'll drag another one here. And I'll drag another one here. I'm going to put another one up here. And I'm also going to separate this image from these three images. So to do that, I'll take a horizontal container, plug that in there. So now let's add our images. Now you might be asking, well, how do I come up with an image to plug into these sections here? Where am I going to get a YouTube logo or a LinkedIn logo? Well, I'll show you that next. This is canva.com. Canva.com has tons of free images and background images that you can use. I'm going to create a new design. And I'm going to go to logo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to elements. I'm going to search the elements, and I'm going to say, like, if I want to add in a YouTube logo, I'll just say YouTube logo. I'm going to add in that icon to the dashboard so that when people click on it, it will take them to my channel. So I'm going to pick something neutral, something like this. I'm going to make sure that what I have is free and not requiring this Pro edition, which costs like $15 a month. You can just get these things for free. So I do that, and then I drag this here, and I'm going to make sure that this fits the box that we have here. Make sure it's centered. I'll call this like YouTube logo. And then you would go to share. You would download this as a transparent background PNG. Once you do that, you'll have these icons that you can plug into your dashboard that will be transparent in the background so that it blends in with the rest of the dashboard. That'll make more sense in a moment. But just find all of your icons in canva.com and it will make your dashboard look a lot better and a lot flashier. And if I wanted to find other things like an hourglass shape, for example, for my patient wait time, or a thumbs up for patient satisfaction, I could say thumbs up. You know, you'll see all kinds of icons that you can use that you can download and then plug into your dashboard. Moving back to the dashboard that I'm building, I actually already have all of these icons already downloaded, so I'm going to start plugging these in. So left click here, go down to this More Options button, Edit Image, I'm going to fit and center, and I'm going to choose my object. So for this one, I'm going to use, let's say, the YouTube icon. So I plug in the YouTube icon, I apply, there's my YouTube icon. I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm going to left click, go to More Options, Edit Image, choose. I'm going to plug in my LinkedIn icon here, fit and center, apply. I'm going to left click here, and then I'm going to add in my Twitter icon. So go to More Options, Edit Image, choose. Here's the Twitter icon, and then I'm going to fit and center these two. Now I want these circles to be a little bit bigger, so to do that, I'm just going to click on this section here and drag this up a little bit, and that looks a lot better. In order to direct the user to these websites when they click on this, we need to add one more thing. I'm going to left click here, go back to More Options, I'm going to go to Edit Image, and then URL opened when image is clicked. We're going to go here, I'm going to paste in my YouTube tag. So now watch what happens when I click on this. So I left click, and hey, who's this crazy guy? Here's my channel. If someone sees my dashboard and they want to know what my YouTube channel is, they'll see it when they click on this button. Next, I'll do this for the LinkedIn button. So left click here, more options, edit image. We'll plug in the URL for this one, and now that one's done. Finally, we have Twitter. So I'll left click here, more options, edit image, and then we got Twitter. All right, these all should be working now. Wrapping things up with this banner on this side, I'm going to left click here, go to more options, edit image, and I'm gonna pick out my D20 icon that I always use. So open that, then we're gonna fit and center. And then apply, and then you're done. I think that D20 is a little too close to the top edge, so I'm gonna left click here. I'm gonna go to layout, and then I'm gonna adjust the inner padding. I'm gonna unclick this all sides equal. And then doing that should make it a little smaller and further away from that top edge. So one thing I just noticed is that my tooltips kind of suck right now. And just so you know, the tooltips are the things that pop up here whenever I hover over my visual. You see this age groupings, month of date, count of patient ID. To make it look nicer, instead of count of patient ID, I want that to be number of patients, or patient volume would be even better. So anywhere we see count of patient ID, I'm going to change that to patient volume. So here's how I will do that. Left click here, and then click this box with the arrow to go to sheet. I'm going to go to tooltip, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to say patient volume. And then I'm going to copy that because I'm going to just paste that into the others. So now you'll see what happens when I hover over this. The tooltip is corrected and it looks a lot better. Let's go back to our dashboard by clicking here. Now I'm going to find all the other tooltips that have that count of patient ID. If you hover over this, we can see that this one is next. So I'm going to jump into this worksheet. I'm going to go to tooltip, and then I'm going to paste that in right here. Go back to the dashboard. What else do we have? This one and this one. So let's go to patient race. So we'll click here, go to sheet, go to the tooltip, and then we're going to replace count of patient ID for that one. And I already know that this other one's department referral, so I'll click into that, go to tooltip, replace this, and then we'll go back to the dashboard. So we also have this visualization here that has average patient wait time, but it doesn't specify that this is minutes. So to change that, what I'll do is I'll go to sheet here, I'll click on tooltip, I'll type mins, and then I'll say patient wait time average. I think that sounds better. Patient wait time average. And that looks pretty good. So let's go back to the dashboard. Now the only tooltip that remains that needs some improvement is this one here looking at gender. This percent of total count of patient ID along table down. That is not very self-explanatory, so let's fix that. Left click on this, go to sheet, click on tooltip, and then we'll just say percent of patients. So the percent of patients that fall into this gender category. Go back to dashboard. All right, so now for the tricky part. We have these 6 sections here that you can see. We need to put one object into each of these boxes, and we need to separate this region from this region. So let's do that now. I'm going to take this wait time average, which is that line graph that we created earlier. I'm going to drag that over until we see this whole box highlighted in a gray region. And then right click and then hide that. To get rid of the background color, we'll just right click, go to format, go to the paint bucket, and then go to sheet. And then we'll click on that tile color that we were using. To get rid of these grid lines, we'll go up to this line here, and then we'll go to rows, and then we'll just remove the grid lines by clicking none. I'm going to put in an icon that looks like an hourglass here to denote that this is patient wait time. So to do that, we're just going to pull in an image object right into this cell. Make sure that that whole gray region is highlighted right there. Choose your image. Here's my hourglass. I'm going to make sure that the fit and center checkboxes are marked, so apply that. And then I'm going to put the overall average wait time for this whole period right in this box here. So to do that, drag this average wait time right there. We're going to right click and hide the title. We're going to right click again, click format, go to this paint bucket, go to sheet, more colors. And there we go. I'm going to make this font a little bit more pronounced by right-clicking Format. We'll go to this font button, and then I'm going to blow this up a little bit by making it a little bit bigger, bold, and Tableau medium. I also want this text to be left aligned a little bit so it looks a little bit nicer. So left click, go to this alignment button, and then up here you just click this left button to make that move to the left edge. Let's repeat these steps, but for the average patient satisfaction level. So to do that, let's go to patient satisfaction, drag that in here, right click, hide title, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to fill this in by right clicking Format, Paint Bucket, Worksheet, More Colors, and then I'll pick my tile color here. You can remove these little tiny white grid lines by going here to the lines and then remove the grid lines from this Rows tab. If you squint a little bit, you can see that there's this white line remaining right here. To get rid of that, we're going to left click, we're going to go to this Lines section, and then for axis rulers, we're just going to say None, and we're going to be on this Sheet tab here to get rid of that. So you go to Sheet, Axis Rulers, None. Let's X out of this, and then let's go to Image and drag that in right here. We're going to choose a patient satisfaction symbol. I'll use this thumbs up right here, and then Fit and Center, click Apply. Now the last visual we need to add is the overall average patient satisfaction. So we'll get this one and we'll drag it here. We'll right click and we'll hide that title. We need to make sure that this background color blends in with the tile. So right click Format, Paint Bucket, Worksheet, More Colors. We'll select that same color we've been using. We're going to left click into this text. I'm going to go to this alignment button, and then I'm going to make this left aligned. We're going to go to this A symbol here, and then I'm going to go to Worksheet, Bold, Size 10, Tableau Medium. I'm going to drag this over a little bit so that it's a little bit more close to this icon here. And now that we have these visualizations here, we have these same tooltips that we have to correct again like we did for these earlier steps. So to do that, we're going to go click on this, go to Sheet, go to the tooltip, and then this is going to be average patient satisfaction score. And I'll just say 0 to 10. And then we're going to click on the wait time average. We're going to go to tooltip and then wait time average, and then we'll say minutes right next to this, or mins dot. Go back to the dashboard. We also want this tooltip to be consistent with this one and this one with that one. So to do that, I'm going to go back into this tooltip and I'm going to copy out this whole wording here. And then I'm going to go back to the dashboard, click here, go to Sheet, and then we're going to paste in this wording here, wait time average. That looks pretty good, so let's remove that old one. All right, so that's good. Back to dashboard, we'll do the same thing for the other one. Click on this line graph, go to Sheet, go to the tooltip. We're going to copy that same exact wording. I'm going to go back to the dashboard, then I'm going to click on this, go to Sheet, Tooltip, we'll paste in that same exact thing, then we'll go back to the dashboard. All right, so for the final step, what we're going to do is we're going to create a little bit of separation between this region and this region. It's not necessarily going to line up with this gap though. To do that, there's something I need to explain about inner and outer padding. Understanding this is going to be a little bit tricky, so if you don't get it at first, that's totally okay, but I'll try to explain it here. If I click on this line graph here, notice what happens on the item hierarchy. You have a parent object, and then you have a child object. The parent is a container that holds this line graph here, this wait time average. Now, if I click on the parent and I give this a color like black, for example, notice what happens when I click back into this line graph and then I increase the outer padding. You'll see this black region that starts to appear. That's because this parent object, when I up the outer padding, that background color of the parent container is going to push inward on the child. So if I go up on the outer padding, that black border gets larger. If I go down, it gets smaller. Now what happens if I were to click on this and I were to give it its own background color? Let's give it a salmon color, for example. Now if I go to inner padding and I increase that, it gets its own border that also is pushing inward on the child. So what we can do is we can take this black edge, which is the outer padding, reduce that to 0 so that that disappears. And then for that salmon or orange colored border, we're going to reset that to 0, and then we're only going to push in from the right side. And that salmon color is not going to be salmon, it's going to be this blue color right here. And that's going to give us our separation between this object and that object. So let's do that now. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to outer padding and I'm going to select 0, all sides being equal. That black edge disappears. Now I'm going to go down to inner padding. I'm going to reset this to 0. I'm going to uncheck all sides equal. And then I'm going to push inward a little bit like this. You can see that edge starting to appear. I'm going to click on background color, and then that color is going to be the same as the dashboard. And there you go. So now you've got that gap there. You're just going to need to do that the same way for this one right here. So let's click this. We're going to make the background color this color right here. I'm going to make this, I'm going to click here and then click on more options and then fit the entire view. And then I'm going to reset the outer padding so that it's back to 0. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to adjust the inner padding by unchecking all sides equal. And then we're going to just line that up. And then we're done. Now, I know that was a lot, but just stick with it. Try playing around with the inner and outer padding and try to get the hang of it, because it is one of the most difficult concepts to get the hang of in Tableau. It's going to take some practice before you understand fully how that works. I hope this was useful for you. I would encourage you to play around with your own colors and make this a little bit different. There's so much more that you can do with this dashboard to really make it pop, but I hope that this is a good starting point for you to get your portfolio built and something that you can use to showcase to your interviewers. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.